Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call my first panelist, Anurag Dahiya, who's the Chief Commercial Officer of ICC. Okay. Mr. Mahesh Bhupathi, former Indian athlete, legend of India, and director at SG Sports. Hi, Mahesh. And the head coach of Hyderabad Toofans, Pasha Gademan. So Anurag, I'll start with you. ICC has played a tremendous role in where cricket is today. Cricket is a religion in India. It's done phenomenally well, even when it comes to leagues and teams. What inspiration do you think outside of cricket, other sports in India, leagues that are coming up within badminton, within kabaddi, within hockey, can draw from cricket to increase fan engagement and to increase and improve sports tourism within India?
Yes, thanks. Firstly, it's a pleasure to be here. Now, I think we find ourselves in a very fortunate position as cricket. As you said, it's a religion in South Asia. So for us, it's sometimes an easier job than other sports. But I can just talk to a few of the things that we do, which I feel help cricket maintain its position in South Asia, as well as help us grow as we're trying to in various parts of the world. And for us, it begins with having a fan-centric approach to everything we do. It's about customizing everything that we do to the fans whom we want to understand, engage with, and bring them into the sport wherever it might be happening, whether it's at the global level or at a league or bilateral cricket. With our events, what we try to do, therefore, is to adopt a flavor of wherever we are. So you will have seen over the last 3 years, we were in India for the ODI World Cup, for example, last year, and our entire branding, communication, marketing was all about India and an Indian event. Switched to the T20 World Cup, which happened in US and West Indies, and it was a completely different flavor. It brought out the excitement of being in New York, the Big Apple, being in the Caribbean, and the role that cricket plays in life there, and so on. So it's about, for us, always looking at who's hosting us, adapting to that, and then presenting our sport in the best picture possible. You talked about tourism, and for us, each of these is a big occasion, which can amplify the local marketing campaigns that a lot of the local governments or tourism bodies might be investing in. So we do work with them also. Yeah. And for example, in the Caribbean, we were featuring all the venues that we were in, beautiful places, whether it was with our talent going out and introducing the surroundings with cricket as the means for talking about it. So there is a bit of a partnership we strike with the local governments and local authorities in working that. We just did a last-minute thing, frankly, in the UAE. As you would have seen, the T20 World Cup for women was to be in Bangladesh. Events overtook us there. We couldn't be there, and we were here, again, working with the local authorities here, gave it a very UAE flavor to the whole event, even though it was at a short notice. Yeah. I think that's really important, keeping the fan at the center of it, keeping the sport above all, and then giving it a local flavor. I think that's really the key thing.
Great, that's quite insightful. Mahesh, big fan. Thank you for everything you've done for the country. In order for India to host more tournaments, more global tournaments, right? Like we see the trends in Middle East, we see the trends in Southeast Asia. A lot of non-cricket tournaments are being held, and they've been held pretty successfully. For us to hold more tournaments within India, what do you think needs to change, or what do we need to do more?
So I think the trend of as you said, leagues has really caught on in India. I think literally every sport has a league or has a league in incubation today. I think starting leagues is not the challenge. I think sustaining them is the main challenge. And from a sustenance perspective, I think it's very important to have stars, right? Indian stars, especially if it's an Indian league. I think that's why, like Anurag said, cricket's a religion in India. It's not the 11 stars. We have 50 to 60 superstars when it comes to cricket. So I think each league needs to have a few tent poles as stars. And I think that drives viewership drives sponsors drives broadcast drives the ecosystem. So yeah, I think that's the critical aspect to it. That's why, unfortunately, over the last few years, some of the leagues have, died a slow death. But, if you don't have stars to propel a league, I think it's a big challenge.
And I think my next question around that is, in order for us to create more stars like yourself, there needs to be a certain change in terms of more talent coming out across different sports within India. What more can we do?
I mean, so we are so far behind the 8 ball on what we should be doing. That's a long discussion. Countries like Japan, South Korea, China dominate world sports. So in my opinion, with the demographic we have, there is no reason that we shouldn't be doing it. But having said that, there needs to be a very bottom-up system like there is in Indian cricket. So Indian cricket is privately run. They do it beautifully from the under 14 all the way to the men's and women's level, and that is why they have incredible depth. And we don't have that system in any sport because every sport is, none of the other sports are privately run. So they all have, bureaucrats at the helm who don't understand sport. So we've got bigger problems across Indian sport. I think a few corporates are trying to take the bull by the horns, like a JSW, Olympic Gold Quest, Reliance. But, if we really want to be a game changer when it comes to competing in the medals tally at the Olympics, I think there's a lot that needs to be done.
Great. Pasha, welcome. Can you tell us a little more about Hyderabad Toofans, the hockey league that's starting in India, and the role that you're going to play?
And the, sorry?
And the role that you're going to play.
And the role is I'm the coach, so I'll just coach the team. Thank you very much for having me here, by the way. The Hockey India League is a concept that took place, the last edition took place a long while ago, and they've given it new life, and they're trying to showcase hockey and take hockey to the next level in India. What we've seen in the previous Olympics, in the last 2 Olympics, is that India, after having their former success, back in the past, they're back at the world stage now. They've not just incidentally taken a bronze medal, but in the last Olympics they've been back again, played an amazing semi-final that, fortunately for me, they didn't win. But in the end, they showcased themselves being there at the world-class level. The Hockey India League is built to make sure that the Indian athletes can take their next steps. So what they're trying to do with that league is get foreign players, select amount of foreign players, world-class talents, to come and play in these Indian franchises. The franchise that I'm with, the Hyderabad Toofans, is one that operates from Hyderabad, of course, and that tries to build a very long-term success. So tries to see how can we get foreign international players and Indian national stars, upcoming stars, and build a new team culture so that they can take the next step, and to make sure that little bit that's lacking in order to get the gold medals and structurally grab them, that we can fill those gaps.
You think, how important is it for huge investment to come in building infrastructure at a grassroots level and then at building great stadiums within India to promote the other sports and to ensure that it develops a very strong local followership and it increases fan engagement and young athletes who want to play the sport or watch the sport and support the sport, right? So what role do you think sponsorships, investment within the country outside of cricket is going to play for it to shape the next decade, and ensure that we get more talent that participates for the country at an Olympics level?
From my side, at least, what I think is that the grassroots levels, it's not only building the stars of the futures, but it's also building the communities. And the way that I perceive sports and being brought up in the European system, it's all about communities. And if you start the grassroots levels, you get this whole community around it. Of course, we're talking about a top level, and we're talking about a certain percentage of players that actually can make a career out of their sports. But you want it to have a bigger impact in your whole society, in your community. At the end, I think that's what the investments, and that's what is really interesting for the investors and the investments as well, to say we're trying to build communities with each other, and not just the platforms for sports itself, but the bigger picture in it all.
Anurag, in order for all the other leagues to grow at a certain level within the country, they're going to need a lot of support from international sporting bodies, right? Can you help us draw some inspirations in terms of how ICC's played a role in different countries in promoting the sport and then probably leading to the leagues doing better, and how other sports can draw some inspiration from that?
Yeah, from our perspective, what we are focused on when it comes to non-core markets is using our resources to get grassroots cricket going. And what we've done is to identify whatever the barriers are, and all our effort is to remove them. So for example, one of the barriers we saw with communities where cricket gets introduced is people are afraid, scared of injuries, because you're playing a pretty scary game. You have a very hard ball rushing at you. Yes, you can get injured. So just recognizing that, we've just come up with a totally new concept, which is called Creo, which is softball cricket. You can play it with a plastic kit. You can play it on any surface. You can make up your rules almost. And what you're doing with that is to break down barriers in terms of making it more accessible, more easy to play for people with no fear of injuries. And that's something that's taken off quite well throughout the world, and we've got 108 members. I would say probably about 20 of them have a serious local program running. The next 80 really need this kind of an intervention. The other thing which we've been doing is to take our events to newer territories as well. I talked about the US. The focus there again was to introduce that market to cricket, get people a little bit more interested in and get a little bit of that curiosity going. Just go out and search for what cricket means, and then feeding that curiosity with content, right? So we worked a lot with social media, and we had 1 trillion minutes during the World Cup of social media consumption. And that's because not all of those trillion minutes are coming through on the field action. There's a lot of surround sound that is going on. And I think that's really the sweet spot you want. You want people to have the ability to experience the sport, have exposure for the sport where they can experience it at the highest level, and then make it accessible enough, where they are able to understand what's going on without really having any major stakes in it. So it's a combination of those three things. And then once countries start getting to a certain level, then you get into high performance interventions, better coaching, investment in facilities, and so on.
Yeah. 2036, India is aspiring to hold the Olympics. From now till then, I'd like to kind of open this to all three of you all. What are the main things that we need to work on as a country to ensure that we can host it successfully and India can have an amazing participation and hopefully a great result at the end of the Olympics?
Maybe I can kick that off. No, that's a very exciting prospect, especially for our sport, because we've just re-entered the Olympics after a 100-year absence. And we will be there in LA 28, and quite likely that Brisbane, which is the next in 32, although not yet a done deal, quite likely cricket will be there. So yeah, we are very excited. If 36 is in India, that means cricket will continue to be there. What can the country do to present itself as a good host? I think there are lots of opportunities between now and the decision-making time. There are global events coming through to India. It's really about using them in the best way possible. I think we, speaking as an Indian myself, I think we sometimes miss the opportunity when it comes to major sporting events. We don't market it well enough. We don't give people, overseas travelers, the opportunity to come through and experience these events. I think if we can make it easier for fans to travel, whether it is through easier visa processes, dedicated processes like the Caribbean, for example, ran, for our World Cup. I think those kind of little things can make a big difference to traveling fans who are planning travel to the host country. So I think if we can use the next few years when we are hosting international competitions in India to really show ourselves in the best, I don't know, Mahesh, what do you think?
For me, from an athlete's perspective, see, when you're hosting the Olympics, you get a wild card into all the events, right? So there's not much qualifying to worry about. So you're hosting the Olympics, you want to have a very high finish, top 10, ideally. We've got 12 years to build on that. So it's not just about building infrastructure or building systems. I think we need to, as a country, be relevant when it comes to finishing high on the table. And I think there needs to be a lot of infrastructure pushing athletes over the next 10 years to reach their peak at that system.
Definitely. Yeah, I think for my addition, and of course I'm a specialist in the hockey area, is to say that India opens the doors and it shows people and it hosts a lot of events. I think it could also be very beneficial to bring India to the rest of the world, and not only to invite the rest of the world to India, but for example, try to see if you can get athletes to go over and go abroad for 1 or 2 years and experience a different setting and a different culture and bring that back to India. So not to have them there in that setup forever, but just to go and experience, sniff on it, see like, okay, what are the elements that we can actually learn from it and bring them back? Because in the end, we're talking about individual athletes, stories that you want to expand. And I think that towards the Olympics, whether it be 36 or maybe the additions afterwards, I think it's really good to create these stories, and these individual athletes need to have different experiences, come back, and then showcase that.
Great. Thank you so much, all three of you. It's been an amazing opportunity to have a chat with you all. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.